There are moments when heaven goes quiet, not because God has nothing to say, but because what he has already said has been ignored for too long. This is one of those moments. Archangel Michael speaks with urgency now, not softly, not symbolically, but with a weight of finality pressing against every word. Heaven has waited long enough for you to act. That sentence alone should cause your spirit to pause. It tells us this is not the beginning of a message. It is the continuation of one that has already been sent, perhaps many times, through whispers, signs, convictions, and delays that felt heavy for reasons you could not explain. What you are hearing now is not an invitation. It is a warning wrapped in mercy. Archangel Michael is not the messenger of casual reminders. In scripture and spiritual tradition, he appears when conflict has reached a threshold, when decisions are no longer theoretical, and when action determines outcome. When he speaks, it is because something has moved from potential into formation. That is why this message does not say a consequence might come, it says a serious consequence is forming. Formation means process. It means movement. It means something has already begun to take shape in the unseen realm, responding not to rebellion, but to delay. Many people misunderstand delay as harmless, as neutral ground between yes and no. Heaven does not see it that way. Delay is a decision of its own, and it creates momentum, either toward alignment or toward loss. You may be wondering why this feels so intense, so personal, so direct. That is because this message is not general. It is targeted. Heaven has been patient with you, more patient than you realize. Doors have remained open longer than they were supposed to. Grace has covered gaps that obedience should have filled. Protection hath been extended while waiting for your movement. But patience has a purpose, and when the purpose is not honored, patience expires. That does not mean God stops loving you. It means heaven shifts from waiting to responding. And what heaven responds to now is not intention, but action. The phrase, "if you don't open this immediately," is not about curiosity. It is about access. There are things in the Spirit that only open through obedience, and there are also things that open when obedience is withheld. You are standing between two doors, whether you recognize it or not. One requires courage, humility, and movement. The other opens automatically when time runs out. Archangel Michael is revealing this not to frighten you, but to awaken you. Fear paralyzes. Truth mobilizes. This is a mobilizing message. What makes this moment especially critical is the word irreversible. Heaven does not use that word lightly. God is merciful, but he is also lawful. There are seasons that do not repeat themselves in the same form. There are windows that close not out of punishment, but because their assignment has passed. When a consequence becomes irreversible, it does not mean God abandons you. It means the terrain changes. The path becomes harder. The cost becomes higher. The protection becomes conditional rather than automatic. Archangel Michael is warning you before that shift fully locks into place. This is why you are hearing this now and not later. Something is still interruptible. Something is still pliable. Something is still responsive to immediate action. Heaven has not withdrawn its hand, but it is no longer extending it indefinitely. You may have felt this already, an internal pressure, a sense that time is compressing, that delays feel heavier than before, that distractions are louder, that clarity comes and goes quickly. Those are not coincidences. They are indicators that you are at the edge of a decision zone. Do not mistake this urgency for condemnation. There is no accusation in this message. There is clarity. There is alignment being offered one last time before consequences finish forming their shape. Archangel Michael stands not as an enemy, but as a guardian, one who defends destiny by confronting delay. He does not come to negotiate comfort, he comes to enforce timing. And timing, right now, is everything. You were not meant to stumble into what is coming. You were meant to step deliberately into what God has already shown you. But stepping requires movement, and movement requires surrender. Heaven has waited long enough, not because it is impatient, but because the season that was protecting you is ending. What protected you before will not protect you after this moment if you remain still. Listen carefully. This message is not about tomorrow. It is not about someday. It is about now. What you do immediately after hearing this matters more than what you have done before it. Archangel Michael is sounding an alarm not to scare you, but to save you from what delay is already constructing. And as this message continues, what will be revealed next will help you recognize exactly where you are standing and what must be done before it is too late. Delay is rarely seen for what it truly is. Most people think delay is harmless, just a pause, a break, a moment to gather strength. But in the spiritual realm, delay is not empty space. It is active territory. Something always occupies it. Archangel Michael reveals that every delay creates an opening, and what fills that opening depends on alignment. When heaven gives instruction, it also assigns timing. The instruction and the timing are inseparable. To obey late is not the same as obeying. This is the hidden cost most people never realize until consequences begin to surface. You were never meant to wrestle endlessly with decisions God already clarified. The struggle you feel is not because the path is unclear, it is because the moment has passed its comfort zone. Delay feels heavy because it was never designed to be carried. When you hesitate, pressure increases. When you postpone, resistance multiplies. This is not punishment, it is exposure. Delay removes the cushioning that grace provided in the earlier phase. What once felt supported now feels strained. What once flowed now resists. This is how you know time is no longer neutral. Archangel Michael makes something unmistakably clear. Delay invites interference. When obedience stalls, opposition studies. When movement stops, resistance organizes. The enemy does not need you to rebel, only to wait too long. That is why so many consequences don't arrive suddenly. They accumulate quietly. Relationships strain. Opportunities narrow. Peace becomes inconsistent. Direction blurs. You may still be praying, still believing, still hoping, but hope without movement becomes weight instead of fuel. One of the most dangerous illusions delay creates is the belief that nothing is happening. In reality, something is always happening. Heaven is recording responses. The spiritual environment is adjusting. Doors are recalibrating. Some are slowly closing while you assume they remain available. Others are opening that were never meant for you, but delay grants them access. This is why Archangel Michael calls delay serious. It rearranges outcomes without ever announcing itself. You may ask, why would God allow consequences to form if He loves me? Because love warns before laws. Because mercy speaks before silence. Because heaven respects free will so deeply that it allows choices, even passive ones, to shape reality. God will not force you into alignment, but He will honor what your actions, or inaction, declare. Delay declares uncertainty. And uncertainty is not a safe place to live spiritually. This is where many people misunderstand spiritual warfare. They assume battles come through attack, but often they come through hesitation. Fear wears the mask of logic. Comfort disguises itself as wisdom. Waiting feels spiritual when it is actually avoidance. Archangel Michael exposes this not to shame you, but to strip away the disguise. You are not being asked to do something impossible. You are being asked to do something timely. This message is reaching you now because the cost of further delay is rising. Heaven has already adjusted once for you. It has already extended a season that should have closed. But seasons do not stretch infinitely. The longer delay persists, the more energy it takes to correct course. What could have been shifted gently may soon require force. What could have been restored easily may demand sacrifice. This is not threat. It is truth. You are not powerless in this moment. Awareness is power. Revelation is mercy. The fact that you are hearing this means intervention is still active. But intervention requires response. Archangel Michael does not intervene instead of you. He intervenes with you. Your movement authorizes his protection. Your obedience activates his defense. Delay leaves you uncovered in ways you may not immediately perceive. This is why engagement matters. Not as a routine action, but as a declaration. When you align yourself with truth publicly, you break the quiet agreement delay thrives on. If this message is stirring something in you, if you feel conviction, urgency, or recognition, respond to it. Take a moment to like this message, share it with someone who may also be lingering in delay, and subscribe so you stay connected to what heaven is revealing next. This is not about numbers, it is about alignment. When you engage, you signal readiness. When you comment, even with a simple "I receive this," you step out of passivity and into response. Do not underestimate small actions done in obedience. Heaven measures posture before performance. Even now, something is shifting as you listen. The weight you've been carrying is not meant to crush you, it is meant to push you into motion. Delay has cost you enough already. Archangel Michael is not asking for perfection. He is calling for decision. As this message continues, what will be revealed next is the consequence itself, what it looks like, how it forms, and how close it already is. Understanding it will sharpen your urgency and clarify what must be addressed before the window narrows further. What makes this moment so dangerous is not what might happen. It is what is already happening beneath the surface. Archangel Michael reveals that consequences do not appear fully formed. They begin as subtle shifts, almost invisible at first, shaping themselves quietly while life seems unchanged. This is how delay deceives. You wake up, go about your routines, pray the same prayers, and assume time is still on your side. But in the unseen realm, something is assembling, responding precisely to the absence of movement. A forming consequence does not announce itself with noise. It begins with misalignment. What once flowed easily now feels restricted. Conversations feel heavier. Motivation fades without explanation. Peace becomes conditional. Opportunities feel close but never quite reachable. These are not random frustrations. They are early indicators. Archangel Michael says this is the stage where many people misinterpret mercy as permission. They think, if nothing has collapsed yet, I still have time. But formation means structure. And once a structure hardens, changing it requires far more than intention. Here is a spiritual principle few are taught. What you delay long enough gains momentum without you. When you refuse to decide, the environment decides for you. When you hesitate, systems adjust around your hesitation. This is why some consequences feel unfair. They were not sudden. They were accumulated. Each ignored prompting, each postponed step, each moment of knowing but not acting added another layer. Heaven warned early so correction would be gentle. Now it warns urgently because correction is becoming costly. Archangel Michael emphasizes that this consequence is not necessarily dramatic, but it is directional. It alters trajectory. You may still move forward, but not along the original path. You may still succeed, but with greater resistance. You may still arrive, but later and wearier than intended. This is what irreversible truly means in this context. It does not mean life ends. It means life shifts into a harder version than the one obedience preserved. Many people assume irreversible consequences only belong to extreme disobedience. That is not true. Some of the most painful outcomes come from delayed obedience. Moses struck the rock when he was told to speak. The promise was not revoked, but the entry was. Timing mattered. Action mattered. Delay and alteration carried a cost that prayer alone could not undo. Heaven still loved him, but the consequence stood. This is why Archangel Michael intervenes now. He stands at the edge of formation. He reveals what is not yet visible so you are not blindsided by what could still be stopped. The consequence forming around you feeds on uncertainty. The moment you decide, its growth is disrupted. The moment you act, its structure weakens. Delay strengthens it. Action destabilizes it. This is not symbolic. It is spiritual law. You may feel a sense of urgency rising as you listen. That is not anxiety, it is recognition. Something in your spirit knows this is accurate. You are not being rushed emotionally. You are being aligned spiritually. Heaven is not demanding speed. He is demanding response. There is a difference. Speed is panic. Response is obedience. Archangel Michael calls for the latter. Do not minimize what you already know. The instruction has likely been clear for some time. The step may feel uncomfortable, inconvenient, or risky. But delay has not made it safer, only heavier. The longer you wait, the more courage it requires, because resistance grows. That resistance is not proof you should stop. It is proof you are close to the point of no return. This is the Bercy moment, the pause before solidification, the warning before locking. Heaven is still speaking because heaven still sees a way through, if you move. This message is not meant to be replayed endlessly. It is meant to be acted upon decisively. And hear this carefully. You are not behind because you are weak. You are behind because you were cautious in a season that required boldness. That can change now. One decision, taken immediately, can interrupt weeks, months, even years of accumulation. Heaven responds faster to obedience than consequences respond to delay. Before this message continues, let this truth settle. What you do next matters more than what you have already postponed. Archangel Michael is not revealing the consequence to scare you, but to empower you while there is still leverage. Hold on. What comes next will help you recognize the exact window you are standing in, and why missing it would change everything. Type "I am ready" in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 819 is now activated. This is the moment where obedience becomes movement, and movement becomes impact. I feel led to speak directly to those whose hearts are burning right now. Your response does more than change your own path. It helps heaven reach others who are still trapped in delay. Scripture comes alive here because God is saying to you, as you sow, I will multiply light through your hands. When you release support through Super Thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are planting seed into living soil, and that seed carries this message to souls who may never hear another warning. I am inviting you personally. Step into this as a prophetic act, not a donation. Let your giving become oil on the altar, fuel for the fire, and a river that carries truth beyond this moment. Heaven honors swift obedience, and there is grace attached to acting now. Support this mission immediately. Use the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on screen, and watch God respond to your obedience with increase and protection. What makes this warning so rare is not the message itself, but the messenger delivering it. Archangel Michael does not appear for routine guidance or gentle redirection. His presence signals escalation. When he speaks, it means a spiritual threshold has been crossed and cannot be ignored. Throughout sacred history, Michael is associated with moments when balance must be restored through decisive action, when delay has allowed disorder to grow too close to destiny. That is why this message carries such weight. It is not everyday instruction. It is a final alignment call before consequence solidifies. Most divine warnings are subtle. They come through inner conviction, repeated signs, or quiet discomfort that nudges a person toward change. But when those warnings go unheeded, heaven shifts its tone. The volume increases not because God is angry, but because the margin for correction is shrinking. Archangel Michael appears when clarity must replace ambiguity. His role is not to persuade emotionally, but to reveal reality spiritually. He cuts through confusion, excuses, and justifications, exposing the true state of the moment. This is why you may feel that this message pierces deeper than others you've heard. It is not layered in metaphor or softened language. It names delay directly and reveals its consequence plainly. A directness is intentional. When time is abundant, heaven teaches patiently. When time is scarce, heaven speaks precisely. There is no room left for misinterpretation. What is at stake now requires sober awareness, not emotional comfort. Another reason this warning is rare is because it comes before visibility. Most people only recognize consequences after they manifest. Heaven, however, sees formation long before manifestation. Archangel Michael is revealing what is still unseen so that you are not caught off guard. This is extraordinary mercy. Many never receive this level of clarity. They simply wake up one day to a changed landscape and wonder when it happened. You are being shown before the shift becomes obvious. Heaven does not reveal forming consequences to everyone, only to those who still have influence over the outcome. That should tell you something important about your position. You are not powerless. You are not excluded. You are not abandoned. You are being addressed because your decision still matters. Silence would mean it no longer did. The presence of this warning proves that intervention is still possible, but it also signals that patience is nearly exhausted. Archangel Michael's involvement also indicates conflict. Not external chaos, but internal battle. Delay often disguises itself as thoughtfulness, wisdom, or waiting on God. But what is actually happening is a struggle between obedience and fear, between calling and comfort. Michael enters when that struggle has gone on too long, when indecision has become a hiding place. His role is to confront, not condemn, but confront the place where truth has been postponed. This confrontation is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to clarify you. Many people are exhausted not because their burden is too heavy, but because they are carrying decisions they were meant to release through action. Blade drains energy. Obedience restores it. Archangel Michael's warning is rare because it addresses the root, not the symptoms. He does not focus on what you feel, he focuses on what you must do. There is also something else that makes this moment uncommon: timing convergence. Multiple factors are aligning simultaneously. Your readiness, the closing of a season, the forming of a consequence, and the availability of mercy are all intersecting now. That convergence does not happen often. When it does, it creates pressure, not to rush blindly, but to respond intentionally. Heaven is aligning circumstances to force clarity because ambiguity is no longer safe. Many people assume that if God truly wanted immediate action, He would remove all obstacles. But often the opposite is true. Resistance intensifies when action is urgent. Archangel Michael's presence confirms that resistance you feel is not a sign to stop. It is evidence that your decision carries weight. Opposition does not gather around insignificant choices. It gathers where outcomes matter. This warning is also rare because it speaks to responsibility, not emotion. It does not tell you how to feel. It tells you where you stand. It reveals that neutrality is no longer an option. You are either moving toward alignment or allowing consequence to finish forming. There is no middle ground left. That clarity can feel heavy, but it is also freeing. It removes illusion. It replaces endless contemplation with a clear call. Do not compare this message to others you've heard before. This is not inspiration for someday. This is instruction for now. Archangel Michael is not preparing you for a distant future. He is addressing a present crossroads. Heaven has already adjusted once. It will not keep adjusting indefinitely. This warning is rare because it is precise, personal, and positioned at the edge of change. As this message unfolds further, you will begin to understand exactly what kind of moment this is, and why responding correctly will not only interrupt what is forming, but restore what delay has already threatened. When Archangel Michael says, "Open this immediately," he is not speaking about curiosity, information, or even awareness. He is speaking about access. In the spiritual realm, doors are not passive objects. They are permissions. What you open determines what is allowed to move toward you, and what remains shut determines what is restrained. This is why timing matters so much. A door opened too late does not function the same way as a door opened on time. Its authority changes. Its covering shifts. Its outcome narrows. Many people assume doors only represent opportunities. But doors also represent escape routes, protections, and transfers of authority. Some doors are designed to release you from what is forming before it gains strength. Others are meant to usher you into alignment before resistance hardens. Delay causes confusion about which door you are facing. You may think you are standing before the same opening you saw months ago, but spiritually, it is not the same doorway anymore. Time authors doors. Archangel Michael reveals that there is a specific door connected to this moment, one that requires decisiveness rather than preparation. This is not a door that opens through prolonged prayer alone. It opens through obedience. You already know what it is connected to. It may be a conversation you have avoided, a step you delayed, a separation you postponed, or a commitment you kept negotiating with. The clarity has already been given. What remains is action. The danger of assuming you have more time is that it creates false security. You tell yourself, "I'll do it when I feel more ready," not realizing readiness is not what opens this door. Willingness does. Courage does. Immediate response does. Some doors are mercy doors. They exist only for a moment, and their purpose is not comfort, but preservation. Once the moment passes, the door does not disappear, but it no longer leads to the same place. This is why Archangel Michael emphasizes immediacy. Not urgency fueled by fear, but urgency rooted in alignment. Heaven is not pressuring you emotionally. It is signaling that the structure of this season is shifted. What protected you while you waited will not protect you while you continue to wait. The door is still present because heaven is still offering intervention. But that offer has conditions, timing being one of them. Another truth many struggle to accept is this: not opening the right door eventually opens the wrong one. When obedience is delayed, consequence does not wait. It advances. Doors of compromise, fatigue, resignation, or detour open quietly. They do not feel dramatic at first. They feel convenient. They feel easy. They promise relief without confrontation. But those doors lead you away from what was originally assigned, even while giving the illusion of progress. Archangel Michael stands at this moment because he guards transitions. He ensures that what passes through you, and what you pass into, is aligned with heaven's intent. His warning is not symbolic. It is functional. If you open what must be opened now, protection remains active. If you hesitate, protection does not vanish, but it changes form. You move from being shielded to being sustained, and sustained is harder than shielded. This door also represents agreement. Opening it is not just a physical or emotional action. It is a declaration. It tells the spiritual realm where you stand. It announces alignment. It interrupts formation. Consequences forming in delay lose authority when alignment is declared through action. That is why even a single step can feel disproportionately powerful. It is not the size of the step. It is the clarity of the agreement it represents. You may feel resistance as you consider this. That resistance is not confusion. It is exposure. The longer a door remains unopened, the more fear attaches to it. Fear grows in silence. Action starves it. Archangel Michael does not remove fear for you. He confronts the environment so your action can dismantle it. Heaven does not override your will. It waits for your response. Understand this clearly. Opening this door does not guarantee ease. It guarantees alignment. Ease may follow, but alignment comes first. Many people delay because they are waiting for reassurance. But reassurance often comes after obedience and not before. Faith does not move once certainty arrives. It moves so certainty can manifest. The tragedy of delay is not that people miss blessings. It is that they adjust to misalignment and call it normal. Archangel Michael interrupts before that adjustment becomes permanent. He warns you now because you are still capable of choosing correctly without losing more than necessary. The door still responds to your hand, but it will not respond forever. This part of the message is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It leaves you face to face with responsibility, but it also restores dignity. You are not being dragged forward. You are being invited to stand up and act. Heaven is not disappointed in you. Heaven is calling you out of delay and back into position. As this message continues, you will see more clearly what happens when doors are opened too late, and how acting now changes not only what is forming, but what is still possible. There comes a moment when consequences move from being flexible to being fixed. Archangel Michael reveals that this transition is not sudden, it is gradual, and that is what makes it so dangerous. People assume irreversible consequences arrive like a lightning strike, but in truth, they settle like cement. Slowly, quietly, almost politely. By the time most people recognize what has happened, the structure has already hardened. This is why heaven warns before that point, not after it. Irreversible does not mean God withdraws his love. It means the conditions surrounding your life change in ways that can't be undone by intention alone. Once a season closes, it does not reopen in the same form. Once momentum shifts, restoring it requires more effort than preserving it would have. Archangel Michael explains that irreversible consequences are often not dramatic punishments, but permanent adjustments. You still move forward, but no longer from the same position. There is a spiritual law at work here. What is not addressed while it is forming must later be managed once it is established. Early intervention interrupts formation. Late intervention requires endurance. This is why delay is so costly. It trades correction for coping. It replaces prevention with survival. Heaven never intended you to merely survive what obedience could have prevented. The most painful part of irreversible consequence is not loss. It is awareness. It is realizing that the warning was heard, the opportunity was present, and the moment passed anyway. That awareness becomes a quiet burden many carry for years. Archangel Michael reveals this not to shame you, but to spare you from that weight while there is still time. Another misconception is that irreversible consequences only affect one area of life. In reality, they ripple. A delayed decision in one place alters outcomes elsewhere. A postponed act of obedience can reshape relationships, timing, resources, and emotional capacity. Everything is connected. This is why heaven treats timing as sacred. You are not just choosing an action, you are choosing a chain reaction. Archangel Michael emphasizes that once consequences become irreversible, prayer shifts role. Prayer no longer prevents, it sustains. It no longer redirects, it strengthens. God still walks with you, but the terrain is different. The climb is steeper. The resistance is stronger. What could have been avoided must now be endured. Heaven would rather warn you than prepare you for endurance that was never meant to be necessary. Irreversible does not mean hopeless, but it does mean costly. Some losses cannot be restored in the same measure. Some delays cannot be fully recovered. Time has weight, and once spent, it cannot be reclaimed. This is not cruelty. It is reality. Archangel Michael speaks plainly because sugarcoating truth would be unloving at this stage. There is also a spiritual threshold involved. When delay persists long enough, it signals agreement with stagnation. Not consciously, but functionally. That agreement authorizes consequence to finalize its form. Heaven respects agreements, even unspoken ones. This is why neutrality is dangerous. Silence eventually speaks, and action eventually declares. You may feel fear hearing this, but fear is not the goal. Clarity is. Fear paralyzes. Clarity mobilizes. Archangel Michael does not want you immobilized by the word irreversible. He wants you activated by the word forming. Because forming means unfinished. It means interruptible. It means responsive, for now. Many people wait for an external sign before acting, not realizing this message is the sign. Heaven does not always shake the ground or change circumstances. Sometimes it sends a word sharp enough to cut through hesitation. This is one of those moments. The warning itself is the mercy. Irreversible consequences are often the result of small delays compounded over time. No single moment feels decisive, until suddenly everything is. This is why people are shocked when outcomes lock into place. They never felt the exact moment it happened. Archangel Michael is giving you visibility now so that moment does not arrive unnoticed. Do not assume you will recognize the final point when it comes. Most do not. That is why heaven speaks before it arrives. The most dangerous phrase in a forming season is not yet. Not yet becomes never when time runs out. Archangel Michael challenges that phrase now, not with anger, but with authority. This message is not meant to make you anxious. It is meant to make you honest. Honest about where you are. Honest about what you know. Honest about what you have delayed. Because honesty opens the door to correction. Self-deception locks it. You are standing at a narrowing passage. It has not closed, but it is closing. What you choose now determines whether you pass through with alignment or remain behind, managing what could have been avoided. Heaven is not forcing you, but it is no longer waiting silently. As this message continues, you will see why resistance intensifies at this stage and how the battle around your decision is not random, but strategic. The intensity you feel around this decision is not accidental. Archangel Michael reveals that resistance always increases just before alignment is restored. This is not coincidence. It is strategy. The closer you get to acting, the louder the internal noise becomes. Doubt grows sharper. Fear feels more logical. Distractions multiply. Old habits resurface. Fatigue sets in without explanation. This is not because you are weak. It is because your decision matters more than you realize. Here is a battle forming around your choice, not because heaven is uncertain, but because opposition understands timing. Delay has already created space. Now resistance is attempting to secure this space permanently. The enemy does not need to defeat you, only to exhaust you long enough that you choose comfort over courage. This is why the struggle feels psychological rather than dramatic. It attacks clarity, not belief. You still believe, but you feel stuck. That is intentional. Archangel Michael explains that the battlefield at this stage is the mind and the will. Thoughts become heavier. Options feel confusing. You replay the same questions repeatedly, hoping clarity will suddenly appear without action. But clarity is no longer the reward. It is the result. In earlier seasons, God clarified before you move. In this season, clarity comes after you move. Resistance knows this and tries to keep you stationary. One of the enemy's most effective tools here is distortion. He reframes obedience as recklessness, courage as impatience, and delay as wisdom. He whispers that waiting is spiritual, that timing is uncertain, that you should gather more confirmation. But Archangel Michael exposes this tactic plainly. When God has already spoken, seeking more confirmation becomes avoidance. What once was discernment becomes deflection. Another layer of resistance is emotional attachment. You may feel torn not because the decision is unclear, but because acting will change something familiar. Even unhealthy patterns feel safe when they are known. Obedience often requires releasing familiarity before replacement is visible. That gap is uncomfortable. Resistance thrives in that gap, convincing you that the discomfort is a warning rather than a transition. Archangel Michael stands in this moment as a warrior not because you are under attack, but because you are at a threshold. Thresholds attract resistance, because crossing them alters authority. Once you act, the enemy loses access he currently enjoys. Delay has kept certain doors open. Action closes them. That is why resistance fights hardest now, not earlier. Earlier, delay served its purpose. Now, it is in danger of being broken. You may notice that resistance speaks in extremes. It tells you that if you act, everything will fall apart, or if you wait, everything will magically resolve. Both are lies. Obedience rarely destroys, it restructures. Delay rarely heals, it hardens. Archangel Michael brings balance back into focus. He does not exaggerate outcomes. He reveals reality. Acting now may be uncomfortable, but not acting will be costly. This battle is also spiritual because obedience restores covering. When you move in alignment, protection increases. Resistance knows that. That is why it tries to keep you undecided. Undecided is exposed. Undecided is vulnerable. Undecided is easier to influence. Once you decide, your position stabilizes. Your authority returns. Your peace begins to settle, even if circumstances take time to adjust. Another tactic resistance uses is memory. It reminds you of past failures, mistakes, or moments when acting led to pain. It blurs the distinction between impulsiveness and obedience. Archangel Michael corrects this confusion. Obedience is not acting without instruction. It is acting because instruction has already been given. You are not guessing. You are responding. The past does not define the present assignment. You may also feel an increase in external pressure, other people's opinions, unexpected obligations, sudden distractions. These are not random. When internal resistance begins to weaken, external resistance often intensifies. It is designed to fracture focus. Archangel Michael encourages you to recognize this without fear. Awareness disarms it. Once you see the pattern, it loses power. This battle does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are nearing resolution. Many people turn back at this point, mistaking resistance for a stop sign rather than a checkpoint. But checkpoints are meant to be passed through, not camped at. The pressure you feel is not telling you to retreat. It is revealing that you are close. Heaven is not watching to see if you struggle. It is watching to see if you choose. Struggle is human. Choice is spiritual. Archangel Michael does not require you to feel fearless, only faithful. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is movement in spite of it. Understand this. The battle is loud now because time is short. Resistance would not escalate if delay were still sufficient. The increase in pressure confirms urgency. It confirms that your action would interrupt something already in motion. That is why you must not interpret the battle as confirmation to wait. It is confirmation to act. As this message continues, you will see what happens the moment you decide, how one act of obedience shifts outcomes, restores order, and alters what delay has been building. There is a moment in every critical season when everything hinges on a single response. Archangel Michael reveals that this is not a season of many steps. It is a season of one decisive act, one movement, one clear response, one moment where hesitation gives way to obedience. This is the moment that changes everything, not because it is dramatic on the surface, but because of what it disrupts in the unseen realm. The instant you decide, momentum shifts. What delay was building begins to lose structure. What resistance was reinforcing starts to weaken. Heaven responds to decision faster than most people realize. You may not see immediate external change, but internally, alignment is restored. Peace begins to return, not because circumstances are resolved, but because authority hath been reclaimed. Archangel Michael explains that peace is often the first confirmation of obedience, even before results appear. This moment is powerful because it breaks agreement with delay. Delay thrives on indecision, on partial willingness, on endless contemplation. But the moment you act, you revoke its permission. You declare that time no longer controls you. You step out of reaction and into response. The declaration alone alters spiritual atmosphere. Things that felt heavy begin to loosen. Confusion clears. Your action sharpens. Not because the path suddenly becomes easy, but because it becomes yours again. Many people expect obedience to feel overwhelming. In reality, it often feels surprisingly simple once chosen. The complexity existed in the waiting, not the doing. Archangel Michael reveals that delay amplifies fear, while action exposes how exaggerated that fear was. What you imagined as catastrophic becomes manageable. What felt impossible becomes practical. The mind quiets when the will aligns. This is also the moment where heaven re-engages fully. Protection that felt distant becomes active again. Favor that seemed stalled begins to flow. Not instantly, not magically, but deliberately. Obedience restores partnership. Heaven does not rush ahead of you. It moves with you. Archangel Michael stands beside those who act, not those who endlessly prepare to act. This moment is not about perfection. You are not required to do everything at once. You are required to do the first thing. The door you were told to open does not require you to know what lies beyond it, only to trust the instruction to open it. Clarity comes in stages, but the first stage is always movement. Something else happens when you decide. Resistance changes tone. It does not vanish immediately, but it loses authority. It may still speak, but it no longer commands. You will notice this shift. Thoughts that once felt convincing lose their grip. Distractions lose urgency. You regain the ability to choose without being pulled apart internally. That is not emotional. It is spiritual order being restored. Archangel Michael emphasizes that this is a now moment, not a gradual one. You do not ease out of delay. You break out of it. The longer delay persists, the more dramatic the break must be. But breaking free does not require force. It requires resolve. Resolve is quiet, but it is immovable. Heaven responds to resolve immediately. Do not underestimate the ripple effect of this decision. When you act, you are not only protecting yourself, you are affecting others connected to your obedience. Delayed obedience impacts more than one life. So does timely obedience. Some of the pressure you have felt was never meant to be carried alone. It was meant to be released through action so others could breathe as well. This is why Archangel Michael calls this moment sacred. It is not just about avoiding consequence. It is about restoring flow. Destiny flows again when obstruction is removed. Delay obstructs. Obedience clears. Even if the path ahead includes challenges, it will no longer feel stagnant. Movement replaces stagnation. Purpose replaces pressure. You may still feel uncertainty after you decide. That is normal. Faith does not eliminate uncertainty. It teaches you to move without it ruling you. Courage is not certainty. It is commitment. Archangel Michael does not wait for you to feel ready. He stands ready when you choose. This is the turning point. Not tomorrow. Not after more thought. Now. The next step you take, however small, signals to heaven that alignment has been restored. That signal matters more than the size of the action. Type "I choose now" in the comments if this moment speaks to you. Lesson code 642 is now activated. You'll be glad you stayed. What comes next reveals how this decision reshapes what lies ahead. This moment of decision is not only personal, it is prophetic. When you act in alignment, you help carry this warning and this hope to others who are standing at the same crossroads. God is speaking through this message, saying, "As you release, I will release through you." I am calling you directly. Let your support become a response, not a reaction. When you give through super thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are sowing into open ground, and heaven multiplies that seed into light, reach, and rescue. This is urgent because obedience always is. I speak blessing over every giver. May your act unlock provision, protection, and clarity. Support this mission now through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on screen, and step into this as an act of obedience, not delay. Alignment is not a feeling, it is a position. Archangel Michael reveals that once the moment of decision has passed, the next responsibility is to stay aligned. This is where many people stumble. They act once, feel relief, and assume the work is done. But alignment is maintained, not assumed. When time hath been lost through delay, precision matters more than intensity. This part of the journey is not about dramatic gestures. It is about deliberate consistency while the window is still open. Right now, time is compressed. That does not mean rush. It means intentional. Heaven is not asking you to fix everything, only to align everything that still remains adjustable. There are areas of your life that must now come into agreement with the decision you have made. Habits, conversations, boundaries, and priorities must reflect the shift. If they do not, misalignment begins to creep back in quietly. Delay often returns disguised as settling in. Archangel Michael warns that after decisive action, the enemy often changes tactics. Resistance no longer tries to stop you, it tries to slow you. It whispers that you can ease off now, that urgency has passed, that precision can wait. This is where alignment must be guarded. You are no longer fighting indecision. You are protecting momentum. Momentum is fragile in the early stages. It must be honored, not assumed. Alignment before time runs out means staying responsive. When heaven prompts, you respond quickly. When conviction arises, you act on it immediately. You no longer negotiate with what you already know. Obedience becomes your default, not your debate. This is how alignment stabilizes. This is how windows remain open long enough for transition to complete. One of the clearest signs of alignment is peace that persists even when challenges remain. Not comfort, peace. Peace rooted in knowing you are positioned correctly. That peace becomes your compass. When something threatened and pay attention, it may be trying to pull you back into old patterns of delay. Alignment does not mean everything is easy, it means everything is ordered. This is also where community and agreement matter. Isolation weakens alignment. Agreement strengthens it. When you speak your alignment, when you declare it, share it, and reinforce it, you close gaps delay once occupied. That is why engagement is not superficial here. It is spiritual. If this message is aligning you, mark it. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to realign before time narrows further. Subscribe so you remain connected to what heaven is revealing in this season. These actions are not about a platform. They are about reinforcing your own response. Archangel Michael emphasizes that alignment accelerates restoration. What delay disrupted does not always return instantly, but it does return intentionally. Heaven rebuilds with purpose. When you stay aligned, you shorten recovery time. When you drift, you extend it. This is not punishment, it is principle. Order produces flow. Misalignment produces friction. Another critical aspect of alignment is discernment. Not every opportunity that appears after obedience is from God. Some are distractions meant to redirect momentum. Just because something opens does not mean it is yours. Alignment requires discernment, choosing what agrees with the original instruction. If it does not support the decision you made, it does not deserve your energy. Precision now protects your future. You may notice that as you align, some things fall away naturally. Relationships shift. Interests change. Desires realign. This is not loss. It is correction. Delay allowed clutter to accumulate. Alignment clears it. What remains is lighter, sharper, and more focused. Do not grieve what alignment removes. It was never meant to follow you into the next phase. Archangel Michael also reveals that alignment before time runs out creates covering. Protection increases around those who stay responsive. Not because they are perfect, but because they are positioned. Position matters. Heaven responds to position. When you stay aligned, you stay within reach of intervention, guidance, and correction. When you drift, you move into exposed territory. This part of the journey requires attention. Not feared attention. You are not walking on eggshells, you are walking with awareness. Awareness keeps you grounded. It prevents the slow return of habits that once delayed you. It keeps you honest with yourself and responsive to heaven. And here is the truth many miss. Alignment is not maintained alone. Heaven supports those who support alignment. Angels are assigned to those who stay responsive. Archangel Michael does not step away after decision. He stands guard during transition. But his protection works best when you remain where you are meant to be. Hold on. What comes next reveals what Archangel Michael is protecting you from right now, and why this warning was mercy, not threat. What Archangel Michael is protecting you from is not always what you think. Many assume divine protection means preventing visible disaster, but most of the time, protection works quietly, shielding you from outcomes you never see because obedience intercepts them early. Delay, however, removes that interception. When timing is ignored, protection does not vanish, but it changes posture. Instead of blocking consequences, it begins managing damage. Archangel Michael's warning is mercy because it reveals what protection has been holding back and what could break through if alignment is abandoned. There are consequences forming that you cannot yet identify with your natural senses. Some are relational fractures that would unfold slowly. Others are missed alignments that would not feel like loss until years later. Some are internal: weariness, cynicism, spiritual numbness that grows when delay becomes a lifestyle. These outcomes do not announce themselves as danger. They present as normal life. That is what makes them so destructive. Archangel Michael protects you by exposing them before they blend into your future unnoticed. One of the primary things he is guarding you from is unnecessary warfare. Delay attracts battles that were never assigned to you. When obedience is postponed, you begin fighting issues you were meant to bypass entirely. You spent mending resistance instead of advancing purpose. Archangel Michael's role as a warrior is not to keep you in endless conflict, but to clear the path so you can move forward with authority. Acting on time prevents wars you were never meant to fight. He is also protecting your clarity. Prolonged delay clouds discernment. The longer you hesitate, the harder it becomes to hear clearly. Doubt multiplies. Conviction dulls. What once felt obvious becomes debatable. Archangel Michael intervenes to preserve your ability to recognize truth without distortion. This is why the warning feels sharp. It is cutting through fog before it becomes permanent. Another unseen danger delay creates is spiritual fatigue. Not physical tiredness, but soul exhaustion. When you carry decisions too long, they drain you. You are expending emotional and spiritual energy without resolution. Over time, this fatigue can masquerade as burnout, making you believe you need rest when what you actually need is obedience. Archangel Michael protects you from misdiagnosing your own condition. Action restores energy where rest alone cannot. He is also guarding your timing with others. Your obedience is connected to other people's positioning. Delay does not only affect you, it shifts when and how others encounter what God placed in you. Some connections are time-sensitive. When delayed too long, they miss alignment. You may still meet people, but not in the same capacity or impact. Archangel Michael protects these intersections by calling you into movement before timing slips beyond recovery. Another layer of protection involves character. Delay tempts compromise. When obedience feels postponed indefinitely, people begin making small adjustments to justify waiting. Those adjustments slowly shape character in ways that were never intended. Image can soften. Boundaries blur. Passion fades. Archangel Michael confronts delay to protect who you are becoming, not just what you are doing. Destiny is not only about destination, it is about formation along the way. You are also being protected from settling. Delay often ends in resignation. People convince themselves that partial fulfillment is enough, that a reduced version of the promise is acceptable. This is not humility. It is surrender to misalignment. Archangel Michael protects you from calling survival success. He reminds you that what God showed you was not symbolic, it was intentional. Acting now preserves the fullness of what was assigned. There is also protection from regret. Regret is not always loud. It is often quiet and persistent. It surfaces in reflective moments, in questions that begin with "what if?" Archangel Michael warns before regret becomes a companion. He intervenes while choice is still active, so reflection later brings gratitude instead of sorrow. Understand this clearly. This warning is not about punishment. It is about preservation. Heaven is not threatening you. It is shielding you. The urgency is not because God is angry, but because protection has limits when timing is ignored. Even angels respect spiritual law. They operate most freely where alignment exists. Delay restricts their authority. Action restores it. You may never fully know what was prevented by your obedience. Many of the greatest acts of protection are invisible. You simply experience fewer obstacles, smoother transitions, and quieter battles. That is not luck. That is timing honored. Archangel Michael wants you to live in that flow, not constantly recovering from avoidable losses. This message reframes everything. What felt like pressure was actually protection pressing you toward safety. What felt like urgency was heaven steering you away from danger you could not yet see. Delay would have exposed you to it. Action shields you from it. As this message moves toward its final phase, you will see what shifts after immediate action, how heaven responds, what is restored, and why responding now changes the entire trajectory ahead. When immediate action is taken, the first thing that shifts is not your circumstances, it is the atmosphere around your life. Archangel Michael reveals that heaven responds to obedience with recalibration. Things begin to realign quietly, often without announcement. You may not wake up to dramatic change, but you will sense something unmistakable. Resistance loosens its grip. What felt stuck begins to breathe again. What felt heavy starts to lift. This is the sign that heaven has acknowledged your response. One of the most powerful changes after immediate action is the restoration of momentum. Delay stalled movement. Obedience restarts it. Momentum is not speed. It is direction with force behind it. When you act in alignment, even small steps carry weight. You begin to notice that progress no longer requires the same effort it once did. Doors open with less strain. Conversation shift tone. Solutions appear without excessive striving. This is not coincidence. It is order being restored. Archangel Michael explains that heaven honors decisive obedience with clarity. Confusion fades not all at once but consistently. The mental fog that surrounded your decision begins to thin. You no longer replay the same questions endlessly. Instead, new questions emerge, practical ones, forward-moving ones. That shift alone confirms you are no longer trapped in delay. Your mind stops circling and starts advancing. Another significant change is the return of peace, not emotional calm, but spiritual stability. This peace does not depend on outcomes. It exists even while challenges remain. It anchors you while the transition unfolds. Archangel Michael emphasizes that this peace is not a reward. It is a sign of correct positioning. Peace follows alignment the way tension follows misalignment. When peace returns, it confirms you are standing where you are meant to stand. Heaven also responds by reactivating protection. Where delay limited coverage, obedience restores it. You may notice fewer disruptions, fewer unnecessary conflicts, fewer draining distractions. Protection does not mean the absence of difficulty. It means difficulty no longer derails you. You move through it with resilience instead of resistance. That resilience is heaven's response to your action. Another shift that follows immediate obedience is acceleration, not reckless speed, but divine efficiency. Things that would have taken longer begin to resolve faster. Delays that once stacked on top of each other begin to clear. This does not happen because you suddenly became more capable, but because alignment removes friction. When resistance is removed, progress accelerates naturally. Archangel Michael also reveals that obedience restores confidence, not arrogance, but quiet assurance. You trust your discernment again. You stop second-guessing every decision. You become more responsive and less reactive. That confidence strengthens future obedience. Delay erodes trust in yourself and in God's guidance. Action rebuilds it. There is also restoration of authority. When you delayed, circumstances began to dictate your posture. After obedience, you regain the ability to respond instead of react. You are no longer being pushed around by urgency or pressure. You move deliberately. Authority does not come from control, it comes from alignment. Archangel Michael protects and reinforces that authority once it is reclaimed. Another change that often surprises people is emotional lightness. You may feel relief that does not logically match your situation. That relief comes from resolution. Carrying unresolved decisions is emotionally taxing. Once the decision is made and acted upon, that burden lifts. Even if the road ahead is challenging, you are no longer divided internally. Unity within yourself brings strength. Heaven also begins restoring what delay threatened. Not everything returns in the same form, but what is meant to remain does. Some opportunities are renewed. Some connections are repaired. Some paths reopen with adjusted timing. Archangel Michael clarifies that restoration is not about rewinding time. It is about redeeming what remains. Obedience redeems time by maximizing what is left. You may notice increased sensitivity to guidance after acting. Prompts become clear. Convivial sugar. You recognize direction faster. That is because alignment sharpens perception. Delay dulled it. Action restores it. This sensitivity helps you avoid slipping back into old patterns. It keeps you responsive rather than complacent. Importantly, immediate action also restores hope, not vague optimism, but grounded expectation. You begin to expect movement again. You anticipate progress. That expectation fuels endurance during transition. Hope becomes practical again, not just emotional. It attaches to steps, not wishes. Archangel Michael emphasizes that what follows obedience is not perfection. It is partnership. Heaven walks with those who move. Guidance continues. Correction remains available. You are not abandoned after acting. You are a company. That companionship makes the path sustainable. This part of the message confirms something vital. Acting now was not just necessary. It was effective. The shift you feel is evidence. The clarity returning is confirmation. The peace settling is assurance. Heaven has responded. As this message reaches its final stage, what remains is not warning, but assurance. Why obedience was worth it, what it secures, and how heaven seals this moment with hope rather than fear. This is the moment heaven had been guiding you toward from the very beginning. Not a moment of fear, but a moment of assurance. Archangel Michael's message did not end in warning. It ends in clarity and peace. Everything you have heard was not meant to overwhelm you, but to bring you back into alignment with what God has already secured for you. The urgency was never about punishment. It was about protection, preservation, and purpose. And now, having seen what delay was forming and what obedience has shifted, heaven speaks with calm authority. You are not too late. Immediate action has already altered the trajectory. Even if the full picture has not yet unfolded, the most critical shift has occurred. You responded. Heaven does not measure obedience by visible results alone, but by posture. Your posture changed. Your agreement changed. And because of that, what could not be reversed has been interrupted. What was forming hath been weakened. What was closing has been held open just long enough for you to step through. Archangel Michael assures you that obedience does not erase challenges, but it reorders them. What once stood in front of you now stands behind you. What once pressed against you now follows at a distance. You are no longer being driven by time. You are moving with it. Alone restores dignity to your journey. Heaven never intended you to feel chased, cornered, or constantly catching up. Alignment restores rhythm. Rhythm restores peace. There is also this assurance: heaven is not keeping score against you. God is not replaying your delays. He is responding to your obedience. Grace does not dwell in the past. It moves forward. What matters now is not how long you waited, but that you moved when it mattered most. This is the nature of mercy. It does not shame. It rescues. You may still feel the after effects of the season you are leaving. That is normal. Transition always carries residue. But that residue does not define you. It fades as consistency replaces crisis. Each aligned step strengthens the ground beneath you. Each act of responsiveness reinforces protection around you. You are not walking alone. Heaven walks with those who choose alignment, even when their steps are imperfect. Archangel Michael also speaks assurance over your future decisions. What you feared you had lost forever has not all been taken. Some things were delayed, not denied. Some doors were slowed, not sealed. Others were closed for your protection, not your punishment. Trust that heaven knows which is which. Your role now is not to mourn what changed, but to steward what remains open. This message ends with hope because hope is the natural result of obedience. Not emotional hype, but settled confidence. Confidence that God still guides you. Confidence that correction still works. Confidence that heaven still intervenes when timing is honored. You are not standing on the edge of loss. You are standing at the entrance of recalibration. Let this be the final truth you carry forward. Heaven waited not to accuse you, but to walk with you once you were ready to move. The waiting was mercy. The warning was mercy. And the assurance now is mercy fulfilled. What comes next will not be built on delay but on responsiveness. It changes everything. You are not behind. You are aligned. You are not exposed. You are protected. You are not condemned. You are corrected and covered. Type "I walk in alignment" in the comments if this message has settled your spirit. Blessing code 903 is now activated. This moment of alignment is not meant to stop with you. It is meant to flow through you. As you step into obedience, God is saying, what you release in faith, I will multiply and reach. I am speaking to you personally now. Your support becomes a living seed that carries this message to souls who are still standing at the edge of delay. When you give through super thanks, membership, or PayPal, you are pouring oil into the lamp, keeping the light burning where darkness still lingers. This is not a suggestion. It is a prophetic response to what you've just received. I bless every giver. May heaven open rivers of provision, clarity, and protection over you. Act now in obedience. Use the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on screen, and let your giving speak where words cannot.